Good evening all. I will open the meeting. We're all here, so there's no apologies. Public forum. Is the guy Fulton not here?
Tim is here for the deputation, but there's no members of the public for the public forum.
All right. Well, we can put him in now or wait?
We can just move on, sir.
Okay, we'll move on. And we won't fit Grant Stevenson just yet.
No, we can just, yeah, he's not here yet.
Yep. Are there any conflicts of interest? Oh, before we carry on, this is being live streamed to tonight's meeting. Confirmation of minutes for the 4th of August meeting. Somebody move that they're a true record, please. Thomas, seconder. Mark, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Matters arising. Tracy, what was the outcome with Laurie Richards after the last meeting?
Yes, so we've had a lot of contact with Laurie, so we're assisting him with his submission to the district plan.
Oh, yep, thank you. And item number 9, the signs for dog control on the Ohoka Stream Walkway. I think you were looking at that one. Was it you or Tia?
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, Grant actually did deal with that, and we did send a response to council meetings about the signs, so that has been dealt with.
Okay. Are the dogs able to understand it as well?
I hope so.
Right. Moving on, deputations and presentations. Tim, you're on.
Right. Good evening, everyone. My name's Tim Fulton from West Ayrton. I came here this evening, and firstly I'll just circulate just to illustrate the point I'm making. I live opposite the West Ayrton Hall and sort of grown up in the West Ayrton Swan area. In fact, my parents' farm frontage was on North Eyre Road, and I admit personally I've always been fascinated in the history of the railway lines that originally went past here, went from Rangiora to Oxford. We've all seen the railway sidings and the remnants are there, the few of them that are there now. I often, in the course of my work and just for a bit of downtime, go down North Eyre Road, and I passed one of these old turntable areas opposite the West Ayrton Hall. But the particular point I want to raise here is there's a mound there that was a remnant of an old railway station, if you call it that. Well, in fact, it was quite a building. I've noticed in recent times that this particular innocuous-looking feature that you see there is basically being trampled and distorted, largely by cattle movements down the road. And I understand that dairy farmers have got to make a business, got to make a living. But to me, it seems that waimakariri-wide, we could actually take some simple steps just to protect some of our heritage features here, whether it be a mound like this, whether it be a railway siding, some relic down here at Ohoka, just a little bit of fencing, a little bit of signage, and just take a little bit of care to protect these features. this particular one, you'll see, look, doesn't look much, does it? But all we need, 4 posts, 2 bits of wire. What would a farmer do? Let's just protect this feature. And just to give you some context here, I understand that the neighbour of the property, who actually has the turntable siding area, like so Mark would be well aware of this, for some years he's actually been putting some fencing in, and he has a project of some sort to install a carriage or and actually did quite a bit of work at this West Ayrton Hall area. So if we see a bit of a big picture here, what steps can the community board take to just to protect this feature? Just to give you a bit of an idea, we're not all trained buffs, but I want to read a little bit of extract of what this means in terms of heritage right through the waimakariri. This applies to other railway remnants. The establishment of the road board and the opening of the school met the primary local needs, but communication with the outside world was very difficult. To get to Christchurch or even Rangiora or Kaiapoi was a major undertaking. We're talking about the 1870s, 80s here. A railway would solve this problem. A branch line from Kaiapoi through Ohoka and over the Mandeville Plains was opened to West Ayrton on December 27th, 1875. This was extended to join the Oxford branch at Bennett's on February 1st, 1878. And you can imagine there's all sorts of goods that were thus conveyed. The opening of the railway had a considerable effect upon the developing district. The most important factor was, of course, the carriage of stock and produce to markets and to ports. It also made it possible to travel further afield at greater speed and in more comfort than a horse provided, whether ridden or driven. And it goes on to talk about, the effect it had. Sure, it closed down. It was probably, it was actually a sort of a political whim of the day. It was probably in some ways a form of institutional craziness that there were ever 2 lines that went out there. In fact, some of you may be aware that at West Ayrton itself, it was subject to probably one of the most sort of rambunctious council meetings you'll ever see. There was quite a spat between the Rangiora factions and the Ayrton factions. They all met at West Ayrton. They had a meeting. The vote to run the line from Rangiora to Oxford was briefly overturned. There were people climbing in and out of windows. There were virtually fistfights. It's a fantastic story of local body politics, if you ever care to read it. It just seems a shame to me, that sort of big picture, that we can't take some small steps to at least protect some of our little bits of heritage that we do have along these lines. And I suppose the final point I'd make is that I do know that living in the area, there's actually a lot of people who, of an afternoon or a day, that they go up walking, biking, they stop at these little areas, and what would it really cost to take something from the council records, put up a sign, and just create little points of interest in these rural areas? It's just another little amenity for rural communities. So I just want some, hope you can take that into consideration and support some sort of first steps to preserve an area like this. So thank you.
Are there any questions? Ray.
First off, Tim, thank you for taking the time to come down here and tell us about this. As it just so happens, we have been kind of on the hunt amongst us for possible landscaping projects in the ward for the upcoming year, so your timing couldn't be better.
Yep.
Now, I'm not promising anything any one way or another, but can you tell me, is there anything at all marking this site at all? Does it anything to say what it is?
No, nothing on that mound. It's only actually a few days ago I was talking to another neighbour and who pointed out that of the private landowners' plans. So if even half of his plans go ahead, then it'll become quite a nice little feature just opposite the West Eton Hall there. So, yeah, one of the things I didn't point out is actually a lot, you know, for an area like ours, quite a few people go walking down that road, and you can imagine in the middle of winter people running their dairy cows, you know, down that road. It's just disgusting. So I'm not asking for that particular, I know probably who the particular farmer is, not asking them to change their farming habits, but all we need some wire around it and take the cows around it. It'll just make a more pleasant sort of area.
So
Yeah.
would you take it as being adequate at all to have something sort of like down Mill Road here? Are you aware, have you ever seen the Wilson's Mill siding historic place? There's a stone set there, you know, as we've got around the district, that sort of just denotes what it is. And
I think something like a stone or a brass plate or something like that, something with a little bit of permanence would probably be adequate. A similar feature, for instance, on Tram Road near the Browns Road corner, that's the motorcycle, you know, heritage sort of site or something. So I know that in West Eton, for instance, like West Durham, Kingsbury, he's got about 30 different points around the area. In fact, I think he's done a lot of work mapping different areas. A lot of them are pretty innocuous. You wouldn't know, you know, what it was or where it was. But perhaps if we just bite this off in little bits, we could have more signage, you know, to some of these historic areas.
we do have a very interesting rail heritage around through here, particularly with that line, like just on the corner of Bradley's Road and Mill Road, and also at the top of Bradley's Road in Tram, there are platforms of the old railway stations and whatnot.
Yeah, and the platform bar itself is fantastic in there.
It's quite exciting.
That's you know, if you did half of that in an area, and that would be great. The other aspect, I suppose, there's a linkage there in terms of West Eton. There's a, you know, the actual rail trail, if you call it itself. I mean, the pathways are great. You know, my kids go to school up and down that pathway. I think it's probably collectively another reason which actually just take a little bit of care for these railway sidings. I mean, North Air Road's got a great siding. Oxford-Ohoka is a bit the same. You know, we've got to preserve some space for these trails for people to bike and walk, and yeah, just
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. This land's still part of the railway reserve, or is it private property?
No, it's roadway siding. It's public land. Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is a bit of anecdotal feedback of this neighbour who had a little talk to the dairy farmers, and first thing they said, "Oh, well, it's public land," you know, as if to say, "Try stopping me." This shouldn't be an issue about private public land. It's not really going to get in anyone's way just to fence it off a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tim. I understand you've written a book on the history of the area. Is that still available, and where would you get it?
Oh, yeah. I didn't come here for that reason. Yeah, I have. Yeah, the Kiwi Farmer's Guide to Life. So, I mean, that actually covered a little bit of local history. Part of it, actually, just part of my bit of the context here is that I've been looking at all of these local sites. I've tasked myself with writing the West Eton School's 150th sort of history, or updating it next year. And so that's how I encountered likes of Bernard and some of his research, and and found some of these little sites that I would say.
So, being a newbie to the area, I'm quite interested in the history of the area. There must be a number of places of historic interest, not only the one in West Eton, but around Mandeville, where I'm currently living.
Yeah.
Are you able to do a summary of historic places of interest?
Well, actually, I know the pamphlet I've got at home. Some of you may have. It's a walking trail to waimakariri. I think it was in collaboration with the Rangiora Museum, and that's a great one, because here it is, little pamphlet. I think we've got about 6 or 7 different areas through Ymca. Little map, 20 points in each area. I mean, if you wanted to just go for a lazy walk or a ride around your own area, it'd be great. It'd be, it's a great way of actually just following it round. So, and that particular document includes old homesteads and things. Obviously, they've got private access, but So there's been some good work being done.
Keep up the good work, Tim.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Tim. Just wondering, this area here, was it a siding? So would it have had a big sign on it saying West Eaton?
Oh, that mound is where the station was. Sorry, but I think is there a picture there of the siding?
Well, you've got this one here. I just can't understand where.
Oh no, sorry, that's a close up. That's actually just close up. That just shows the trampling of that mound, and particularly the tyre tracks and
I can see that.
No, just an example. Probably about 20 metres, sort of, further east, just over the fence. There is the siding there. Where I understand this gentleman's got plans to put up a railway feature in there. So so it was all linked together. Presumably it was a reserve, and it's, as you know, it's got big wide sidings. It's a good walking area and becoming busier. So
Now, why I asked the question is at Bennett's, council has actually restored some of those signs, and there is 1 or 2 signs that have been restored.
yeah.
So I just want, that's why I needed to know if this was, it is.
You're talking about the big signs.
Yeah.
Faces the road.
Yeah. Oh, so you've got one there already?
Yeah, that's the.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Questions answered.
Do you know when the railway line was closed?
let's see. Yeah, the line continued to be used until 1954 for the carriage of stock producing goods. And it was closed progressively. I think one of the earlier ones was from Horrible to Bennett's, and then I think the last one was it used to run about once or twice a week. Until perhaps into the late 50s. So at best, so it's. I suppose you'd say from a heritage point of view, it's a remnant of the changing times in this area. I mean, the way that had disconnected some of these areas with the West Etons, the Horribles, the Airwalls actually were, and that they did rely on these railway platforms. World was a different place, I suppose.
I am actually on a property down bottom end of Mayoral Road here, and the railway line went through our property. And I was told when we came here 20 odd years ago that the line closed down this end anyway in 1964.
I have seen that, those sort of figures. Yeah, that would be right, I think. So,
Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. As you know, I'm a passionate West Eaton person as well. I seek your leave, Mr. Chair. It's not much a question for Tim, but if you're at the crossroads at West Eaton, we've got the West End Hall, which is a beautifully restored historic hall of pride in the community. We're doing work on the Oak Reserve across the other side, and we've got oak trees that go right through to my boundary on the other side of the water unit land, which is historical trees. This crossroads at West End has got quite a bit of historical value to the community in terms of and the linkage up to the school. So I was working from home Monday, probably 1,000 cows came down the road in one herd. Milk tankers at one end, trucks at the other end. It took about half an hour. It won't take long with intensification of as we're seeing now, that this will eventually be eroded away, Tim?
Yes, it's only, it's actually, I should say, it is partly outside my parents' base back at further along North Air Road, there isn't much of a stretch there before it's going to be all tar sealed, and that will transform that road again. It'll be a difficult job to do. Whoever takes it on, it's a twisty sort of S-bend and difficult jingle, but increasingly there's a lot of traffic going down there, so those and all the way down North Air Road, so those road sidings become more and more valuable. So it's just worth probably bearing that in mind, that she will want to sort of protect these. And I suppose the other feature is, just in support of my argument, if you like, is that I'm sure that there's a lot fewer people actually biking down Tram Road now, for instance, than there ever used to. For a time there, it was you did a full loop from, some people went to Christchurch and back, and I think that a lot of people have been put off using these main, Tram Road, for instance, at peak hours, and they're probably going to be looking to actually literally go off the track and use some of these side roads. And I see a lot of people in our area just doing biking, sometimes sort of 20, 30k loops. So, it'd just be a nice place to stop. So thank you for that. That's all.
Thank you, Tim. We will see what we can do for you.
Yeah, great.
Well, not just for you, for the district.
Yeah, no, much appreciated. Thank you.
Right, there is no adjourned business. Move on to reports. Grant. The West Oxford Reserve toilets. At the end of this, you may wish to talk to us about what we were going to do at the end, the landscape budget projects.
If that was okay with the chair, I'd certainly appreciate that.
Yep.
Right, so first off, this report on West Oxford Reserve toilets. I'm going to keep my review short, because otherwise my glasses will fog up and you won't be able to see me. So we in the long-term plan there has been provision for a toilet block in the West Oxford Reserve. That was quite out, I guess, a way out in the long-term plan, and then it became apparent that the government has been putting out what they call TIF funds, which is a Tourism Infrastructure Fund, and that is a fund specifically to help, drive tourism in New Zealand and providing locations for tourists to be able to use that are of a good quality that encourages people to visit our country and tell the good news of what it's like to other people and encourage them to come. So we have previously done a toilet at Saltwater Creek using that fund, and that was a really successful project where we went half and half with the tourism infrastructure, and we did a similarly applied to that fund to see if we could get some money towards the West Oxford Reserve toilets, on the understanding from council that if we were successful with that application, that they would allow us to bring that budget forward so that we could have the time frames would align to be able to do it. So we put in an application. The government were a little bit sneaky, and they gave us 5 days from when they sent out the application to when they needed it in. So unfortunately we couldn't follow our normal process, which would have been to come to the board, get a plan approved for what we're going to do, and then go to the application. So we put the application in and included in that the master plan, which is in your report, as an idea of what we were hoping to do there and what it would look like. So as part of that, we asked for money towards a 2-bay dry vault toilet system. So there's no power or services on site, which means that the toilet obviously won't have those services. So a dry vault pretty much means that it all gets captured into a tank, and then we come and empty that tank as required. And we have, because we don't have water there, we have sanitizer station, which you can wash your hands or clean your hands with, I guess, if but also bearing in mind most people that have got camper vans have got facilities to wash their hands themselves. And in terms of lights, it would have a solar panel and be lit and able to be used at night, obviously. So we put in an application, and we're successful in getting the money from the government's Tourism Infrastructure Fund. So the next step is for us to get, board approval of the concept plan of where we're wanting to put it and what it would look like, so that we can then go ahead and implement it. I was hoping to be at your last meeting, but unfortunately due to our lockdown that got pushed out. So in the interim, because we have to, part of the stipulations of a government's fund is that we have to have everything consented and approved and pretty much ready to build by 6 months after them saying you've got the money, which hits right around that Christmas period when everyone stops and stuff. So we have to get, approval of things before that December deadline. So we have actually gone out to tenders to try and find a contractor who would be able to provide the toilet and install it. And what we're looking from you is, a review of that plan to hear what you think about where we're going to put it and what it would look like, and whether there's any changes we need to make to that plan. I'll also note, in terms of the plan, that we've obviously put facility in there for the toilets, a little bit of parking and a bit of planting around that. That would link in the same sort of planting that's already been done on site by Keep Oxford Beautiful. We're also looking at using some of that budget to fix some of the potholes in the existing track and create an additional loop track. So just come out from a track and back round in the, you'd call it the southern corner that's shown on that plan. So yes, we have spoken to Ymca regarding it, and they are comfortable with the location, and in particular referenced comfortable around the height elevation, because obviously it is right sort of on a plain beside the Eyre River, but they were comfortable with the height of that, and added that they believed that actually having facilities here was going to be beneficial because it stops pollutants and stuff from being put in the river if there aren't facilities provided. So yes, I think that's probably enough from me, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'll get this wicket. Thanks very much for this. This is good news, isn't it? But a long time coming to the council, to the community board, unfortunately. Just clarification. You've said there's not going to be any water, and originally we did talk about having a tank that could be filled every so often for hand washing, but obviously that's the soap stuff was just going to be there for that reason then.
There's no reason why we can't explore that. That may increase, probably would increase the budget, so we'd have to work out what stuff we might take out of that.
Yeah.
I guess Saltwater Creek, is everyone familiar with Saltwater Creek rest stop? That was installed mid to end of 2019, and it similarly doesn't have any services there.
Okay.
So we've just got the sanitizer station. That seems to be working really well.
That's right.
We haven't received any complaints or concerns around it. So we kind of felt that was probably sufficient for what's there. But I can certainly, we haven't priced up what it would be to add another tank for water storage.
No, okay.
We would probably, if we did that, we probably still would retain the sanitizers just in case someone came and the tank was empty for some reason at that point. But yes, certainly can look into that.
Oh, well, I'll leave that with the Oxford Community Board for them to consider down the track.
I've got 3 questions actually. Because it's Crown Ymca land, what approach have you made to them about helping with maintenance, etc.?
That's a good point. We haven't spoken. So Ymca these reserves have a very strange sort of relationship where, yeah, it's owned by Crown and ECAN, but it's managed by us, because I guess ECAN, in their view, they would be happy to leave it as farmland and lease it out, or whichever. They don't have a great need for it, whereas as council we've decided this is a great spot for people to stop. So we've kind of created a relationship with them that allows us to use it for that use. So we can certainly have that question for them and say, look, would you happy? But they likewise could come back and say, well, actually, we don't have really an interest in that. So
thank you. And how often will it actually be maintained, etc.? Because it's a little bit out of the area. And what is the ongoing costing to actually maintain it?
Yep. So in terms of how often and the costs, I can't actually answer that offhand. I can certainly find that out. I can say it would be cleaned regularly and ensured it was emptied regularly. With Saltwater Creek, we did a little bit of I guess, trial by error to start with, just to see how much it would be used. And then within about a month, we had an understanding of approximately how often it needed to be cleaned and how often the tank needs to be emptied and things. So obviously that's seasonal, and it's also determined by how many people are using that particular road, and then on top of that, how many of those people are self-contained versus wanting to use it. And bearing in mind, it's not just the campers who would be using the toilets, it's other day trippers, people from Oxford who might be entering the riverbed. So a little bit hard to say at the moment, but I can say we would ensure that it was cleaned so we've got a level of service in terms of cleaning, so it would be cleaned to that level. It wouldn't be left to get grimy, but I can't say how much that would cost, unfortunately.
Thank you. My last question is just about the maintenance of the track. You just about lose your car in it, so why wait till you get money from here to actually maintain the potholes in the track that's already there?
Very good question also. In terms of the maintenance of that track, that's organised by our operations team. I'm not sure where they have their budget is sort of, I guess, arranged by necessity around where things are worst. I don't know where this sits on that. While I was out there visiting the site and looking at where we would put a toilet, I thought, you know what, actually, why not apply for some budget for the track as well? So that's how that got in there. I thought if we can only ask them the question, if they give us some money, that's a bonus for us. So they said yes. So
that's good, because Keep Oxford Beautiful members are quite concerned about the state of the track. Yep. And it's been like that for quite some time. So can it be put on a maintenance
schedule
budget for ongoing?
I imagine so. What I'll do is I will talk to our operations team who organise that sort of maintenance and just check where that is and get them to get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Okay, Grant, you can move on to your next subject.
I think you might have to...
Oh, sorry. Go back. Yep. Seconder? Sarah? Any discussion? All right, all in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, can I just say, members will notice that the speaker system sometimes flashes if you're not speaking. We had people testing it. They say it's when it's looking for signal. So if you just ignore it, it will find itself again and then switch itself off. So it doesn't mean that your battery is flat or anything like that it's on. It's literally just looking for Wi-Fi. If members would like, the public has left, so you can take your masks off if that would be more comfortable for you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So, thank you very much for letting me proceed straight into the general landscaping update or budget. I think most of you are familiar with the process of how we do that. Pretty much the board comes up with ideas. You let us know. We come to you with a report on outlining all those, I guess, the positives, negatives, the costs, all that kind of thing. The board makes a decision and approves budget, and then we go ahead and try and implement it. I would like to start by thanking your board, because out of all the boards, you're the board that has come back with actually ideas. So thank you very much for that. It's really appreciated at our end, because it means we're not going into the dark or having to kind of pester for ideas. So that was fantastic to get a flurry of emails of different ideas from the board. So thank you for that. Obviously we don't have a projector or anything to do a PowerPoint slide, so I've just printed it off for you, and I apologise. Some of the wording is a little bit small, so I'll try and, where it is, explain what it is. But yes, so you know why from some of the projects we've done in the past few years. So we've installed the bike stands at Oxford. We've done some work down at the Oaks Reserve. There's a little bit left to do there, but it's certainly looking great and really being appreciated by the community. We've got a seat in Oxford Main Street, and we put some money towards the bollards at Mandeville Sports Centre. So that's a few of the I guess good news stuff you've done. There's also a few projects that are kind of still pending or in the pipeline, such as the Oak Reserve in West Earton, and yeah, like I said, the remainder of the stuff at the Oaks in Oxford. In terms of your budget, what you've got available, you had a carryover of 2,890 from last year's budget. That some of that was unallocated, some of that was savings on other projects. So the Main Street seat, we actually saved about $1,050, I believe, from that. So that got put back into your budget. You then had a budget allocated this year of 12,710, and since that point, you allocated the budget to the bollards in Mandeville. So you'll see in that remaining column, there's 9,210 from that budget to allocate. So all up, you have 13,150 to allocate towards projects in this financial year. Before I move on, any questions around that budget side of things? Reasonably straightforward. Fantastic. So in that case, we will get into some potential projects that have been put forward. So we've had a suggestion of putting some money towards the Ohoka Domain Flying Fox. So just across the road, the Ohoka Residents Association, have I got that right? By and large, yep. They've done, so we identified a Flying Fox is part of the master planning process for Ohoka Reserve, Ohoka Domain, sorry, but there wasn't budget at the time to actually install it, and so that's something that's been picked up by the community. There's quite a lot of money has been raised through the community to do that, and they're ready to kick off. They've got a contractor ready to start, I think, on the 15th of November or October, one of which, very soon anyway. However, that contractor's looked at the ground conditions there and said because of the waterlogged and the high water table, they're actually going to need bigger foundations for the poles, which is going to add a bit of cost. So they feel that they're around $5,500 short from where they thought they were going to be.
Have you spoken to them recently? So is this all new information? Because $5,500 is more than I understood it to be requiring, but I hadn't actually heard about the extra foundations for the high water table.
Yeah, so that was a discussion with Rod Buchanan yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because whenever I spoke to him previously, like last week, he was thinking about 1,000.
Yeah. So it's fair to say they would be really appreciative of any budget that was given to them, because that's budget they don't have to try and find through community funding. So that's one project that has been put forward. We also have a suggestion of some additional landscaping improvements at the Mandeville shops. So potentially some picnic table. There are some picnic tables there, but some work around that. Potentially some planting. There was a suggestion of shingling the car park. I've just put a little note on there. The decision around what that car park would be and whether it would be shingled and things has been dealt with by the board previously through reports and decision making. So at this stage, it's not our. We're not anticipating that would get shingled. There's also a bit of concern, I guess, from Green Space's point of view around the impact that would have on the root zone of the trees if we were to make a real hard stand above them. But it's an idea that's come forward. But
Can I just update you there on that?
Yep.
Yeah, the Mandeville platform has just changed ownership, and I got accosted by the new owners about the state of that particular car park. Initially, 12 months ago, or 18 months ago, we were told it's an all-weather track. It doesn't need any shingle, and that it will be fine. After the rains of January, thank you, and July, it became an absolute mess, and all of the shop owners were complaining about the mud coming through. People using that particular car park, which is an overflow car park, were complaining that it was difficult to find a car park that wasn't underwater there. So I have photographs that I can provide you with, but it's not suitable for purpose. Only in the summertime when you don't have rain is it fine.
Can I ask a question? What about mulching it with bark or something like that? Would that help? I mean, that would be all right for the tree roots, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I've certainly seen that. For mulch tends to float is the only thing, but that possibly could be an idea worth looking at. I guess the other side of this is to shingle that is probably outside of what the budget you have in terms of general landscaping. So that could be something that the board could request more information on and look to including in an annual plan submission for specific funding towards it. The amount of shingle and stuff to do that, I think probably would put it well outside, the cost of doing that would put it outside of what you've got available in your general landscaping budget. But that's certainly something the board could consider. I haven't seen photos of when it was that waterlogged, I guess. But I
would see it as a general maintenance issue rather than something that would come out of a board landscaping budget.
So that could be done, I guess, if that was done as a service request to Green Space, either by the shop owners or by a board member, and then we can reply on how that might look or what would go forward from that. So.
The dangerous trees that were there, that were leaning over like this, have been maintained and chopped down and taken away. They look good. My understanding is that the gravelled area, there are no real trees of significance which are in the vicinity of that anyway, so I personally can't see why or how gravel would affect any trees. There is a historic tram line or railway line that goes right through that, which is quite elevated, and that's the main access way that takes you in, but it slopes away on either side, and it's the low-lying areas where cars would park that is the issue that would need to be built up.
Right.
Wouldn't need to be built up much, but it's just enough to cause an inconvenience for anybody that uses that. In saying that, I understand there is a resource consent from the owners of the Mandeville Village to extend their car parking on the eastern side of the supermarket, where they're looking, as part of their resource consent, to gravel that area and double the number of car parking, which may well mitigate what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I haven't been privy to what's happened with that resource consent application, but that may well solve what we're talking about. I'm certainly in favour of some sort of landscaping in the old forestry reserve in the Mandeville area there, where young families can come and sit outside in the sun and take advantage of the council-owned barbecue tables that are there.
Fantastic. So let's, I guess,
just to keep the board updated, it's not about the shed.
No, it's
The
not.
shed's being dealt with separately.
Yeah,
This is about landscaping around the shed.
yeah.
So that's what they're looking for, is some funding, like the board approved for the Swan Cricket Club and the Eton Pony Club, is to plant shrubs and trees around the shed to break down the hard lines of the shed and the contour of the grounds. That's what the rodeo club are looking for. Yeah. The shed's been approved by the Mandeville board.
Yeah.
They've got the funds to build the shed. The shed's going up. They're wanting funding from us under the landscaping budget for shrubs and trees and natives. The shed is only 4 metres by 5 metres. It's not a huge shed. Yeah.
Yes, so yeah,
Yes, but that's right, but so, it can go into the mix, but, it's got to go into the mix with other things we wanted to do.
They could still, if they weren't successful with this, they could still apply and ask for landscaping, money for landscaping for that shift.
Well,
my apologies. That was probably my confusion created that of thinking it was for the shed as opposed to landscaping. So, yeah, so there is no, just to clarify, there's no application process for this fund, for the General Landscaping Fund, but it is, I guess, expected that groups would come to you as their representatives and you would bring those to the board. So when I thought that this was a project which, I guess, in terms of the shed, needed to go through the trust first, that would have been a process going that way. If they've already got approval for the shed and for a bit of landscaping around it, then the board is within their rights to allocate budget, if the board chooses to, towards that planting. Hope that clarifies it, and sorry for that mistake on that. Hopefully I don't create added confusion with the asphalt track. I'm not sure if that has been through that group. Yeah. So in that respect, that would probably need to go through the Mandeville Sports Club board and then come back this way. Fantastic. So yes, they are the ones we've got in front of us. There may be other ideas you've had in the meantime, such as sidings for railways or whichever. What I need from you is, I guess, an idea of the ones that for you as a board, you think, yes, that could be something worth looking into further. I can then bring a report back to you with, this is the cost, this is what you could achieve, and recommendations, and then you guys go ahead and approve which ones you think. So, yeah, I guess it's up to you to have a bit of a discussion. I can answer where I can around which ones you might be interested in pursuing further and letting me know.
Yeah, I'd like to drag us back a bit because I haven't been able to get a word in. If there is, as Ray mentioned, a resource consent for a car park being increased at the Mandeville shops, can Grant, you or probably you, Tracy, make sure that the car parks are wider than they are in the existing car park? Because there's been a lot of controversy over big vehicles parking and not enough room. Please.
That's all prescribed.
Yeah.
So that will be all within rules that relate to the resource consent process. So.
Okay. I understand the resource consent application was simply for metalling the area and being metalled, I can't see how it would be a marked car park area in the first instance. It's just stage one of a future development, depending on a number of things, including a proposed plan change for the particular site.
Wendy?
Would you mind, please, just because I can't read your little print here, those little purple colour kidney things, shapes around there. What are they?
So I guess they were just very broad brushed areas that we could.
Oh, okay.
As wildflower to kind of
Oh, I'm with you. Right.
those
Yeah.
spaces.
Yeah, I didn't know if those little blue ones were actual sighted.
So
plots.
the blue squares are possible burial sites.
Yeah, yeah.
So that we've identified the right shape, about the right depth, and
Yeah.
and there is disruption above them, but we
Yep.
can't say that it is.
No, that's fine. It's just a bit hard to read.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
I will ensure if the board wants to, I guess, pursue that one, that I'll make sure, and when you get the report, you'll be able to see that
Lovely.
quite clearly where they are and what we'll be proposing.
So how would we actually, just moving on, how would we actually define these areas? Would they be just for the wildflowers around there and they wouldn't have any edgings to it or anything like that, or what?
Probably not, no. So we could just sow it in that area. And
Okay.
come up.
Righto, thank you.
Right, any further questions? Thomas?
Probably more of a comment than a question, but I think the idea of a pump track is an awesome idea. I tried to reply to your email, but it's still in my unsent box because I'm a bit simple sometimes. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. It just would be the cost would be the only whole drawback on it. And I think if we somehow could get some contractors to do it, it'd be great. I'd be happy to be part of it. They've done 3 this year, so they're pretty popular at the moment. And I really like the idea of doing something at the Mandeville Village Reserve. I personally think it needs a bit of a sign or something just to say what it is there, because it's a bit of a, just looks like a paddock with a couple of trees in it. So I'd like to see a sign or something go in there just to, I don't know, just to represent that it's actually a reserve, not just someone's paddock. So, and I actually really like the idea of the wildflowers at the Oxford Cemetery as well. I think that's a good idea. So.
With the asphalted tracker in the Mandeville area, I was sort of talking to Ray about an idea, and also I had a meeting with a group of kids at this Wananoa school as well, with things that they would be keen on in our area. That sort of project probably, I guess, has to come through in a different way, but potentially could get a bit of funding from this. But I think that we've probably got a pretty lucky pool of local contractors too that would likely pull together and do that. I mean, we've probably got 2 on the board here right now, so that potentially could be a way of getting something like that there, because I think that would be a really great, especially when they get their mountain bike track going around. I mean, have a hub there for the kids to go to and something to do would be awesome. And plus around that Mandeville shops, just like what Thomas said, at the moment it would be a great little place to go grab a feed of fish and chips or a pizza from wherever the platform, and you can go out there and sit out there, so some plantings or something to make it safer for the kids to be there. Anything would be progress to what it was. So I think that would be a real benefit, and bring that whole hub together as well as a usable site. This Wananoa domain is just a write-off, really. It's just, there's nothing, I don't know whether it's because the cricket ground's taken over or what it is, or which part of it is this Wananoa domain, which part can we use. It's just a very confuddled space with a couple of old swings. So that's probably would be a great project for this Wananoa school to get involved with, and doing something in combination with them if that was something to happen. But yeah, I'm happy. There's lots of great ideas on here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From my perspective, I think I look at the first one from the Hoka one, I think it's worth getting a report on. I think this is so small, even my glasses aren't helping me with this. The second one, the Mandeville shops one, I think, yes, we have talked in the past about doing something more in that space. I'm supportive of that. The Swannanoa Domain one, there used to be a Swannanoa Domain Master Reserve Plan that was developed, showed the cricket club and what we were going to do, and that reserve draft was going to go out for consultation. It never did. So there's probably on file somewhere. I know that originally the roadside vegetation trees all burnt down, so they got replanted. The cricket club got funding for some of it, but that reserve master plan was designed for the community, the school and the cricket club and the hall committee to all to do that through that process, like the West End Domain one. And so the concept of doing something in there should be, I think, be a wider community involvement in that one. Definitely, I think the idea of report on the idea around the flowers at Oxford, I think, is worthy. Certainly, not Mandeville Sports Club. This is the Rodeo Club. The reason why is very little detail that we only had a meeting with them 3 weeks ago, and so I only put them onto this potential area of trying to get some funding to help them with their landscaping. I can say that the Mandeville Sports Club is working on a complete biking, running, walking track right round its 80-hectare site. It's got that in its 20-year strategic plan, and we're developing that as funding comes up from council and other groups and help from local contractors. But that's a bit of a slow process because there's lots of tree roots and neighbours to consider as well around that one. So that would be, and again, I'm not sure how to handle Tim's one in terms of whether that would be an idea to go into a report for that specific historical site, or that could be handled differently from a different department of council. I'd seek advice on that. I'm not sure how that could be protected, whether it's from this budget or what can be done to protect it. So that's my thoughts anyway.
Yes, just about the Oaks Walkway for us. I'd be very keen on the wildflowers. Keep Oxford Beautiful has also indicated that they would like to do the bulbs and things like that once we've got a proper plan, and they would really like to see it quite English, and it's a completely different thing than Pearson Park, which they consider that's to do with sporting things, whereas the Oaks is a lovely picnic area, quite quiet. I'd like to see some funding to go towards the Mandeville planting. And regarding Tim's, I think that's a jolly good idea. We don't know if there's concrete underneath it or not, probably not, but the council does have funding in their heritage thing. I would really like to see it actually sort of fenced off or something, rather than just a wee plaque, and maybe a bit of story about it, because you go to other towns and you actually can read. You can actually read what it's all of, what it's there for. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Just in terms of that mound on North Air Road, I think to protect it, it needs to be something quite strong. I've lost my box 3 times to dairy cows on the road. They rub against it, fine. So I think if you're protecting an historical site like that, it needs to stand up to a fair bit of pressure from a large angry dairy cow. And the herd that came down the other day was about 1,000 cows. And so I think it needs to be something solid enough to protect it, so there's no chance that staff will be going back every couple of weeks trying to put a white fence back up again. So that would be only my comment on that one. But.
Yeah, just very quickly, some of the feedback from the local body conference that I went to back in April. A lot of the community boards that were attending that from around New Zealand got far more involved in the actual projects that they were funding. I think we're very fortunate here in that we have contractors on the board as well. But the winning entry, the winning board project from throughout New Zealand was from a little board at a place called Oxford-Ohoka, which I think is in the North Island somewhere, and they had built a pump track, which Thomas was referring to, and now it's world famous in Oxford-Ohoka for their pump track, and I think something like that would certainly bring them in, especially as the Swananoa to Mandeville cycleway is given number one priority, and we're going to have a number of people coming to do that cycleway, and to have something at the end of it like a pump track and a cycleway walkway right around the Mandeville village would be outstanding for the area. That's all I've got.
Just a couple things. So do we have any kind of broad costings yet, or is the purpose of this with you to work out things that we want you to cost on? Okay. And also with regard to the heritage items, could we actually, as a board, apply, or how, I should know this, but off the top of my head, I'm not 100%, with our heritage, if we could actually apply for because there are quite a few heritage sites around the district that have no demarcation whatsoever. Okay. As far as the projects, I think that they all look quite worthy. And as far as the flying fox over the road goes, that's been in plans for many, many years. My daughter is second year of university now, and she was a year 6 whenever we started talking about it. Kids have been waiting for an awfully long time for that. And I believe that all of these other projects are also worth looking at. So, but if they're outside the scope of our funding available, perhaps we can look at other ways. And also, what scope is there for us to use volunteer labor and community funding and that alongside of it?
So on that point, I actually offered to build some buns and Pearson Park around the stage for free. It's going to take me like 3 weekends, and it was labour and truck hire, and I offered it for free, but it was next to impossible in the end, so I flagged it. But on the pump track, there was actually Shirley might remember it, there was a pump track beside the museum in Oxford a few years, it must have been removed about 15 years ago by council when they extended the car park, much to my dismay. But yeah, just a bit of history there, because it was quite well used, and I don't know why it got removed. It obviously was just they wanted to use the land for a bit of extra car parking, but yeah, it was a bit disappointing. But yeah, the pump track's a great idea, I reckon.
My query was with the wildflowers at Oxford. I think that's a lovely idea, and would be a vote for me. But is there any scope of using any of the funds already allocated to there? Because I'm sure that wouldn't be a huge cost. Could that not be squeezed in with the current funding?
About the dog thing, why are we putting one of those in the Oaks Reserve when you won't put one in the air one? You know, where you're going to put the toilets.
That's a fair question. I'm trying to remember why you didn't put one in.
No, I actually asked, and I got told no. So why are we putting a dog poop station in the Oaks?
I guess the reasoning behind putting it in the Oaks was
Thank you. Joanne.
Okay.
Did you tell him to go away, did you?
Yeah, he just wanted to have the history.
All right. No way that the vegetation can be cut back to improve the visibility in both situations.
What to the extent required to achieve the sight distance. So under
This is in regards to the North Air Road one. Did no one notice in preparing this report that there's already a stop sign there? And there has been since they upgraded the intersection?
Yeah, although it's changed as part of the section works, but we've got and acknowledged we have our order of stuff wrong, and this should have come to the board first.
So if we tell you you have to pull it out, then.
Well, it's actually almost fallen over, so it's on a big lean.
Just telling me, I'll need to get that.
Great idea.
You get additional question.
What's the question?
Any other questions?
Yeah, why was you wasting money and doing a report on it?
Well, we do need to go through the process. We need to make sure that we do go up to the board, and if they acknowledge it was done the wrong way around, it should have been done. That's where the report should have come first.
I'm happy to move those sections. Okay, stop signs.
Any discussion? All in favour?
All right.
Yes. Carried. Do we have permission?
And now you make it.
Yeah, Scott, would you like to come forward now?
Thank you. I think maybe basically the purpose of my report tonight is to the Oxford-Ohoka Community Board to consider approve a new road name for a new private right-of-way, which will be created on a property which is 681 Points Road. It will be approximately 8 million boxes as part of the subdivision, and the road name, the private right-of-way name is chosen by the developer themselves. And I'll trust you the opportunity to read my report, and I will look forward to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Please. With the road names, has the Oxford-Ohoka Community Board actually made some suggestions of names, to have a list of names? Because I know there's quite a lot in the other areas, and I think it's time we did have a, yeah.
So the other boards, Woody and Consultation and Mandeville all have their own road naming lists, and,
Yeah.
and we were sort of a few years ago we worked with Woody and Sefton to create a list of names with the help of historian, basically to create a list of names. And unfortunately, with like the Ravenswood, it's almost been depleted, unfortunately, because that's taken most of it. But it's helped them a lot because right from basically just pick names from the list and go from there. And then we can send that to the developers, say, you want a new name, here's the list, and you go from there.
Yeah, thank you. When we thinking about the community board, thinking about the names of pioneers and such like in the areas, I think it's actually really important that we really start thinking about putting some names together to be used.
Through you, Mr. Chairperson. Scott and I was actually discussing it this week, and the governance team will assist the board to draft a list. And if board members can forward any suggestions or any suggestions of who we can speak to, that would be highly appreciated.
When this board was only an advisory board, there was a list. But I think it was actually a council list rather than a specific board list. Can you remember, Mark?
We've named a couple of other places in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've been given some research about local councillors from the Air Council or principals or postmasters of the local district. We've had some choices to choose from along with what the developers put forward. I mean, I tried to look at this because it said it's in Horrellville, which is a bit of a stretch really. It's on the other side of South Air Road heading towards the Ymca River. It's probably, in my mind, more way down in Airwell area. But I got thinking about, past principals of, the early first principal of West Eaton School. There's a nickname for that person, who are some of the early landowners around that area, as opposed to just taking a developer's name. So I was just, is there any urgency to actually do this tonight, or could it lay on the table for another month and we can, giving the board time to look at some historical choices? Because again, once it's named and it's done. You can't change it. Now, I'd rather we're talking about historical sites, trying to preserve them and trying to recognise our past in the local area as well. So, and any consideration of te reo as well. So, yeah, that's only my thoughts.
He sort of answered my question because it's only a private right-of-way, it's not actually a road. And I was just wondering, Eastwick, are they the people that own the land or are they just the developers?
He is a developer, but also a person who currently owns the land. He's developing it himself.
Has he owned it for very long?
I guess my point kind of is along those lines too, being that it's not a significant road and it kind of is a part of the history of that piece of land. That person with that name has developed it, so he is the history of the development of that, so, or the beginning of the history of it. So, I don't know, just an alternative way to look at it being...
I've just had a thought, maybe we could call it the Vic Allen Road. Sorry? No, he doesn't. But he's...
I just want to make it clear that I'm not against that name being used, but I'm just future. I think we need to actually get our thinking about our areas and our heritage and history.
Some years ago, there was a road off Easterbrook Road that the people who developed it wanted to use a family name, and the board refused and came up with a different name. And in some respects, because this guy's using his own name, it's not perhaps acceptable. But we're under pressure to make a decision.
So Is Eastwick the developer's actual surname, or is it just the name of the company that he owns?
No, so the gentleman is Alan Eastwood, so he, basically
Okay.
he's the name of the company. His company is Eastwood Enterprise, but he's basically he owns it. He's the director of that company.
Okay, thank you. I would think, just my 2 cents worth, that if I can turn this into a question, but could we not, because this is just a private right-of-way, in this particular case, go with that, because titling time is of the essence for them. And definitely, I really agree that we should look at having a bank of names for various areas throughout our ward that we can turn to, because it does make it easier for people when they are developing, as well as, and gives a clear expectation, I think, of what the names should be in character, and nods to heritage, etc. And also, it should just be, we should really just have something that nods to heritage. So with that, may I move the recommendation? Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, may I move, I would like to move the recommendation as it stands. I would like to move A, B, and C.
And I'd like to second that.
Aye. Good job.
I thought we put a list together last term. I seem to remember.
Yeah.
I'm sure we did something last term.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I know you must have Oxford names, and there must be some West Ayrton names, and I'm sure there's some Ohoka, like Swananoa. Yeah.
Right. Moving on, please. We've done the last trade yet, we're going to rush it. Item 7.4, the EV charger. I've got Tia written down, Tia's just told me Tracy.
Yeah.
So obviously Vanessa couldn't be here tonight, so I've said that I would be available without the huge depth of knowledge, but if there are any questions you want me to go check anything out, I will. But obviously this was following the earlier report and feedback provided from the community board about the location, and looked to meet that need, and all things being equal should proceed on that basis unless something unexpected comes up that causes it a problem. So, yep, happy to take any feedback back or any questions.
A question about the lease that the farmers market actually have, and that there would be a sign on the EV stations to say that it couldn't be an EV station on a Sunday. That is a public car park, and it's not only used for the farmers market on a Sunday, it's anybody can park in there, and they don't have stalls in there, they have them beyond the fence. So I would not like to see, well, that's not a question, is it? Is it, could we not have a sign at all?
Well, an EV sign, but that's...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Considering that under Shirley's pressure we got that car park sealed, we've got authority. Ray.
Just to say, if I turned up with my EV car on a Sunday to go to the market, I'd have to park somewhere else.
So the recommendations don't mention signage one way or t'other, so they can, if you support them, they can stand, but you could add another request that says, request that signage is da-da-da-da-da, as, following a recommendation, recommendation G.
It says that the Oxford Farmers Market, as part of the regular licence to occupy, permits the right to use a Pearson Park car park on Sundays to support the delivery of the Sunday market.
It's minus, we have to say, but not, they have no right to the EV.
But no right to the two EV parks.
It's just,
I think you get
through you, Mr. Chairperson, it's just, you note that. It doesn't mean that that they can't use it as charging bays on a Sunday. We can take out the whole of C if you want. It's going to make no difference.
There were some fish hooks in putting this charging station in at the originally proposed place in the Oxford Town Hall, which required us to approve additional funding for it to go ahead.
That's the extra 6,000.
So what then happens with that funding should it now no longer be required due to the change of a slightly more appropriate location if it is found in actual fact to be so?
So in 6.1 it talks about that shortfall, so they've signalled there'd be a funding shortfall, so it's going to be 6,000 contribution from each. Meridian anticipate that it is still required in the new location. So, yeah.
So do we have to...
Recommendations are really noting that the agreement and the licence to occupy, that there were nothing contravening that really the board's noting that the licence to occupy works there. But I guess surely your point is talking with the parties and making sure that it's clear about how that works and that the signage doesn't wrongly depict what the situation is.
Well, as Ray said, it needs to be 24/7, so it'll just be an EV charging point, and people won't park there because it'll be painted blue or yellow or whatever, and people will know not to park there. People are very, very good with the EV car parks.
If they're prepared to pay the toll.
It gets clarified and that it's clearly understood what the intent is around that, and talk to Vanessa about that so that it doesn't become an issue.
Probably just a question around the way the report's written, because item B, it talks about the location that was formally requested by the Oxford-Ohoka Community Board, and it talks about like that was the town hall was the preferred option, and it was my understanding that it wasn't. The town hall was the option that was given to us because it wouldn't require any extra funding to install it there. So we were forced into picking that, and that actually wasn't the case. So it probably wasn't our preferred option. So it's not very clear. It makes it sound like we chose that town hall site when it was chosen because of the transformer, which was irrelevant in the end. So it just seems to be something that keeps popping back up, that it was our decision to put it there when it sort of wasn't.
So which paragraph was that?
Oh.
See, I took that when I read that it wasn't that there was informally requested by Oxford-Ohoka. It wasn't that the original location, it was that the alternative location be considered. That's how I read that. Yes. So it's, I think you're right, I think it would be clearer, but I think that's what was intended.
Yeah,
But take your point.
That way, but
Yeah.
right.
Yes, we formally requested it to go to the Keys and Park car park, so that's fine. Who's done what?
The charging stations in Rangiora, you have one outside the warehouse, which is a prime parking spot, and I'm always seeing big four-wheel drives being towed away from there because it is a prime spot. The one at the Pack and Save is a way over in the corner where it would probably be the last car park to be filled up anyway. Is there some way of choosing a car park at the Pearson Park to be a least desirable one furthest away, so you wouldn't have problems with locals with their big cars? No, it's got to be a certain car park, is it? And is it a prime car park or is it a...
They're all prime car parks.
Are they? Okay.
That's close to the electrical.
Closest to, yeah, because the wiring.
That's why it was chosen there, because it's got a big power.
And is it a fast charge?
Oh, no, fast charge, no.
So it could take 3 or 4 hours,
No, about an hour 20.
hour and 20, because the one at the Pack and Save takes us about 20 minutes.
This one's an hour and 10 to
Yeah.
fully charge.
Okay.
That's timing for you going to coffee and then at the shop.
Catch a movie.
I just ask, who's towing the cars away? I mean, could I ring up Shane and get him to come along and tow the car, or how does that work? Because we don't have...
We used to have a child person.
Yeah, Shane.
Enforcement, effectively we don't do enforcement after hours unless we're specifically rostered people on. There's an event, we're going to do random kind of enforcement. So the parking team don't operate outside of those hours. If there's towing required that creates, a risk, emergency, blocking off pathways or whatever, there's a process to deal with that, but it's not done I wouldn't envision it will be done for overtime parking and for EV stations or anywhere else.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, through you. Board members will remember that in July we noted the budget that was allocated to the board, as well as approved the criteria for the board discretionary grants. An issue was raised at some of the other community boards about applications received from schools and the eligibility of schools for grants. Because according to some of elected members, school activities needs to be actually funded by the Minister of Education. This is a recommendation to amend the criteria for the discretionary grants, just to make it a bit more clearer that applications from schools will not be considered, but applications from parent and teacher associations and funding committees or any other group associated with schools will be considered. So it basically rules out then the Board of Trustees of schools applying. During the last 5 years, we did a quick calculation. The Oxford-Ohoka Community Board received 4 applications from schools, which was all granted. I just want to stress that this is absolutely up to the board to decide, because every application needs to be considered on its merit, and so even if you put this clause in your criteria, this is just a guide. You can still make a decision contrary to the criteria that you have. It's, like I said, it's up to the board to decide. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
From what I remember, 2 of those school requests were from West Ayrton School, and they were both for library books, and their library is public as well as school library. One was Ohoka for their 150th anniversary. What the other one was, I can't remember.
It was the high jump.
The high jump. Right. For Ohoka again, was it? All right. Sarah first.
I think generally most schools, PTAs, have a fundraising person, so most of the applications will come from the PTA, so it would probably cover that. I mean, the idea that the ministry is funding schools is a little bit laughable, but there's certainly lots, especially in higher decile schools, they've got a lot of fundraising to get funds to run their school. So I would definitely be in support of supporting schools. So if this is a way to make it more helpful, then great.
So just clarification. So if it comes from a PTA or any kind of school group that comes to us, then we can consider those. But if it specifically comes from a school board of trustees, which I don't think we've ever received anything from a school board of trustees, then it would be declined? Is that the differentiation that we're talking here? That's it? Or are there more nuances to it than that?
That is basically what it boils down to, but it doesn't mean it's been declined. This is more a guide to the people who apply than to the board. So just that they won't, I don't want to say be considered less favourably, but just that the board will take into consideration that they were supposed to actually get funding from the Minister of Education.
So, for instance, if kids were fundraising for a camp or something,
yes,
or if the sports team, or sports equipment, they needed new uniforms or equipment or something that they couldn't otherwise get, or what have you, and the sports coordinator comes to the board or whatever, those will be favorably looked upon. But if the board comes and says, we would like funding to finish our building project, we clearly say, no, thank you. Is that what
is
we're
how I
saying
understand
here?
it, Councillor.
Thank you.
I think when I was looking at this, and if I was in West Eden School, and I've been the board and board chair there for like 12 years, if this come across my table, I'd just say to the board, just send all your applications to the Friends of the School and put it through them, and they'll donate the funding back to us automatically. So it's all it does is by default drives the funding different channel, the same outcome. I think with West Eden School, for example, the library is not funded by the ministry; it's funded. It was
by doing this, is it making it easier for schools to apply, or is it just so as it stands, schools shouldn't be applying, but they could apply if we put this in?
That's a very hard. Schools are already applying. This is an administrative tool to bring the criteria, maybe, or to guide the schools to be in line with the criteria. But like I said, it's totally up to the board to decide if a school comes, even if the school comes and say, I want to paint this wall, then the board can use their discretion to say yes or no. If you look at the criteria, it says that the board will only provide funding to organisations, community organisations and non-profits. And a school is not considered a community organisation and a non-profit. Therefore, this is why some of the other boards raised the issue that they want this in the criteria. But for me personally, it's more administrative action than narrowing the board's authority to consider an application or not.
Can we not just then add schools to the list and then use our discretion to say yay or nay?
I actually did question the West Eton one because I believed, books should be provided by the school. But once Mark had told us what happened at the West Eton school, I was all in favour. I'm not too sure about the wording either, because there hasn't been very many boards of trustees that have come to us. It's normally been groups within that. So I was just wondering if it could be worded a bit differently.
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, if the board wish, they can move A, B and C, and then it remains exactly the same than the currently. A and C. We don't have to change it. It's a board decision. It's just, yeah.
May I test the meeting and move a motion? I was just about to propose that we move A, receives the report, and C, retains the status quo for the 21-22 discretionary grant fund application criteria.
My question to that would be, because they're not actually listed in here to be able to apply for the grant, then it doesn't make it very welcoming to do so. So I can see why maybe something needs to change in here, but whether it's just changed differently to what's written here. So just say, yes, schools can apply. It doesn't have to be from a specific group in the school. Schools can apply for this funding.
It isn't a school.
Sorry, I don't know if it helps, but my understanding is from the other community boards, it was around trying to say, to differentiate that the Board of Trustees, as you quite right, Shirley, they get funding for things to maintain the school to do those activities, but they want to leave the door open for associated groups like PTAs, Friends of Board, if you're organising a Jubilee, so they're distinctively saying, hey, that's different, that wouldn't be funded by ministry. So I think that was some of the driver behind it. But absolutely, Tia's right, you could just leave it as is.
By approving in the past applications from Board of Trustees, are we not applying with the policy?
No.
They are just guidelines, exactly. Tia said you have full scope. So what it's trying to do is give you and the community some guidelines, but you've always got scope for whatever reason to say, for this reason we're granting.
Please. I think members should also just take into consideration that we had 4 applications in 5 years. And now the percentage is so low that if we stick with the motion and the second that is currently on the table, it will be fine. Schools.
We can actually change our rules at any time anyway, so if there was an issue, we can change it later anyway. So
That is correct.
Okay, let's look at using B, and applications received directly from the School Board of Trustees whereby being directly funded from the Ministry of Education, instead of will be declined, could be declined.
No, but we've got a motion on the table.
I know that, but we can change that.
No, we have to.
So, someone can move an amendment.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'll move an amendment that we reword that to could be declined. May I have a seconder? My amendment is lost.
Okay, then we have to, the original motion, put that to a vote?
Yeah, right. We go back to the original motion, which is A and C. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, correspondence, is there any?
Yes. It's at the back. I was requested by Councillor Nicky to actually include this on the agenda.
Sorry?
I was requested by Councillor Nicky to include this in the agenda.
Oh, yeah, yep. So, yes. There are still a couple of wolves that live in Ohoka village anyway.
Actually, this big house, Louisa, lives in the little, it's just a couple rows down from here. And you can just see it just kind of behind the hedge. There's a newish, red brick townhouse in the front where, one of the children of Colin Walls lives. And then her brother, Glenn, who has an awful lot to do with this place we're sitting in here now, lives a few doors down on the left side of the road, White House. And, they, to this day, even in their advanced age, are very active, members of our community. Much loved.
We need to move to accept the correspondence.
This is one of the reasons why I looked this up about making sure we've got names for our various
Would you like to add that we add Ethelwood, Stewart and Walls to our list of names?
We can do it. Probably not necessary.
I will make sure they're there.
Just to see the names, Walls.
Wall Street.
Yeah.
Don't get carried away.
Okay, Thomas has moved.
Thomas has moved.
Seconder.
Second, Sarah. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, Chairpersons Report. I attended a Zoom meeting with a local government New Zealand on Three Waters and thought that the LGNZ was, some people were for opting out and some were definitely for opting in. The next day, I attended the council meeting in Mayoral on the Three Waters, and their obvious opinion was opt out. That was ages ago. And I've had a North Canterbury Neighbourhood Support meeting since then, and that's about all that I've got to report. Thank you. Somebody move that report be received, please. Wendy and Shirley, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Matters for information. 10.1 to 10.15. Somebody move that we receive those. Thank you, Mark. Seconder. Thomas, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Members' information exchange. We will start with Sarah tonight.
Loud enough. 150th anniversary next year, so I'm just linking in with that group around some community events, one of which it looks like with the Oak Reserve planting. I can update you on now. So we had some feedback from the Hall Committee and the Western Garden Club. So they've recommended, or they prefer that one of the large pine trees gets taken out where the shrubs are going to go. They were asking questions around irrigation, pumping irrigation to the shrubs, and also question why the natives were going further than what we originally thought. I sent that feedback on to Grant. He's come back saying the removal of trees is under a 4D policy. I did say to the feedback group that removal of trees is a very highly emotional topic that can take a number of months to work through. Grant's recommend is that the tree stays. It actually does help with the shrubs, not take away from their growth. Is also that there is no power or facility to use reticulated water, even though the pump's only 20 metres away from the area. So it looks like it would be more the community, led by myself, in those early months. We would be bucketing water out of the water race to get it going. It's definitely going to take the feedback on board about cutting back the number of grasses. But the school probably and the garden club and the hall committee, we will probably have a public planting day and mulching day. Now it's too late, so it's going to be probably April next year when the work will be done. So because that's the garden club said they don't recommend we do anything now. It's too late in the year. Grant probably agreed with that. So money can be held over, and we'll work towards linking it into the 150th celebrations of the school. And the other thing I read in the paper, which I wasn't sure I could recall it last week, was some comment around a Lees Valley Dark Sky Nature Reserve. I saw one of the papers. there's a group working towards that, and I hadn't come across that in any of my previous discussions here. So I wonder if anyone knew anything about it. It was in the, not the North Canterbury News, the other one that we get, the... Oh, no, it was in the North Canterbury News. It was the Lees Valley Dark Reserve or something like that. So I was going to bring the cutting with me, but I'll take a shot of it and flick it around the board, but it's the first I'd heard of it. So, yeah, that's all for me.
I met with Grant Rayburn and, is it Ed or someone from Green Spaces at the community gardens because they're still having problems with vandalism and rubbish and that. I spoke with Grant today, and the council are going to put a security light on the big pole there, funding, they've managed to find funding, and it will also, it'll go and they'll be able to see the toilets and that as well, so that's really good. Just to let you know that the Pearson Park Advisory Group have spent over $4,000 and planted beautiful azaleas and rhododendrons between the old bowling green and the redwood trees. And Mark, if you want a tree blown over, 2 of our redwoods went from Pearson Park, so if you want that pine tree. Yes, so, and does everybody know that the council have actually put out the consultation for the speed limits? There hasn't been very much at all out there, so I don't, and they're only given just 20 days for people to actually respond to it. That's me.
Was it 2 weeks ago regarding the proposed district plan? I also attended the Mandeville Sports Centre AGM, which was on in the middle of September, and I'm pleased to say that Mark Brown, our very own Mark Brown, was voted on to the board as a full voting member, so well done, Mark. We did have a big discussion at the AGM on what's happening with the Mandeville Sports Centre. Some of the elderly members were a little bit concerned that, especially with the new plan, which I think is a great plan for the extension to the club rooms. But there were 1 or 2 that were a bit upset in the way it was going, and in fact they thought it was becoming more of a town and country club rather than a keeping up the flavour of being a sports club. I noted that there were a number of, in fact I had a delegation of a few people that came to me from Truro Place, which adjoins on near the entrance of Mandeville, and they were concerned that they were only given 2 days notice that all the trees along the entranceway were due to be chopped down and that the chainsaws were about to be started up. That was 2 weeks ago. The trees are still there. I did ring Grant from Green Space, but left a message and I haven't heard back yet, so it'd be really good to have some sort of consultation between the sports club and the council and the local people who live adjoining that. Apparently there was one member of the public who complained about the trees, and so as a response the council are looking at cutting down a number. Be a shame because the sports grounds there do really need those tall mature trees. It is an emotive issue, and especially the cricketers when the nor'wester blows, to have those trees down would be a real shame. There's also a number, and they brought this to my attention as well, a number of public walkways and cycleways that some of the developers who have built around the edge of the sports centre have left so that people can gain access onto the Mandeville Sports Centre. And over lockdown I did a lot of walking around the edge and noticed that there were a number, but they all seem to be fenced off. And when I mentioned it to the manager Richard, he said it's a council concern. So again I left a message with Grant, can we have these opened up so that people can gain access either by bike or by pedestrian access, especially as there is a considerable sum that the board have there to be able to complete a cycleway around the edge, and members of the public would welcome having access there, not only just through the two main access ways. The district plan, the proposed district plan, is out there, and we had a number of neighbours of mine who were very keen to discuss that at the Ohoka market last Friday, and turned up only to find that it had been cancelled. They weren't sure why, but it was cancelled, and at this stage Mandeville, Ohoka and Swannanoa, a very large area, don't have any forum at this stage for discussion, apart from one meeting. I think it's about a few days away from the end of the submissions, and I know a number of people in Mandeville are very keen on putting submissions in around the proposed district plan. Quite a few are in favour of it, and quite a few aren't in favour of it, and they just needed to be able to discuss that. So I guess the only other alternative is to go down to Oxford, or up to Oxford, or head into Rangiora. Yes, Tracy.
And I will just check, but my understanding was we were asked not to attend the Ohoka market because of their spacing, or there was some issue that we were asked not to attend.
Winter configuration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to keep it for stallholders.
To be out onto the lawn.
Yeah.
Oh, so next Friday there will be.
Well, it's quite tightly packed over the winter. It only meets on the actual car park, so they have a reduced number of vendors, and they're wall to wall. And with the social distancing requirements and things, I think they found it difficult to actually find a space where we could safely set up.
Right.
Yeah. So we were asked to stay away from that one.
Whenever it goes to its summer configuration out onto the lawn,
I'll pass that on,
it will
but
be,
yeah, I wasn't here last Friday, but apparently it was very well attended, with people estimating well over 1,000 people.
Yeah, no, we were asked not to at that point. So, you know, we always obviously respect that. Absolutely, yeah, we are getting additional requests to go along to different groups and speak, so we can absolutely look at arranging that. The key message I keep saying to people, though, is, and I know it can be a bit of a hassle coming in, but you can't underplay the value of a one-on-one with a planner, and I've got plenty of slots, so people might want to go collectively, just have to watch numbers and room space, but certainly one-on-one can sit down and go through that. So, you know, because I agree with you, if people want to do a submission, it'd be great that they have enough time to do that. So if they can't get to an event, or there's not an event going to be local, I'd really encourage them to book a session with a planner.
Okay, because I, for one, will need a hand, because I started out a submission, came to the first question which said, which number are you submitting about? And I completely had no idea what number. So I'm going to.
And you can ring up. So we've had been great, but you can also ring through, so people have been online and got stuck or whatever, and they've been given that assistance. So there's plenty of resource sitting there. So tell anyone if they get stuck or are at all worried, don't hesitate, ring, get some help.
Okay, so there's no hard paper copies of it around?
Oh, in terms of the plan?
Yes.
No, you'd have to download that. You can download it, it's downloadable, and you can download it in sections, but you'd be doing that, downloading and printing off on your own computer.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Grey Power meeting yesterday was cancelled due to COVID, so that didn't happen. And I had some notes here on the Mandeville Village in the car park. We've discussed that already. So that's me.
Just to comment on and raise comments, they are valid concerns by those sports club members that were built into the MSC strategy and vision, that at the heart of it always will be a sports club facility, and that the needs of the 14 clubs are paramount over the wider community, because that's why the MSC exists. The board also recognises that sports clubs don't generate enough revenue through the facility to maintain the areas and stuff we want to do, which the council can't fund. Therefore, we need to entice the community and outside groups onto the MSC so we can get their money, basically. And it's a fine line of ensuring that we stay true to the ethos of why the MSC was created in the first place. And I think and we're talking about that all the time at board level. So, but those older members who we owe a lot to for the work they've done, we've got to make sure that we listen and take their concerns on board. With regard to the trees, I only found out about it that they were coming down at our last board meeting, which was only a couple of weeks ago. And the reason they're coming down, not all of them, so there's one line of trees staying, there's the 2 lines in behind the first set of, it's due to the damage in the wind. So it's because I said, why are we cutting down trees? Because I'm a bit of a greenie now, so if you cut them down, you can't get them back for a long time. And the thing is that even though the trees are on the MSC, they're not owned by the board. So all trees on the property are actually owned by the council, and when they come down, we can't even sell the firewood. The council take everything away. So it's the council-owned trees on our leased land, and those ones are coming down due to concerns about they won't survive too much more of high winds, which I think we're going to see more of. But again, I do think if it was the case between our board and the council advising neighbours of work going on that would affect them. There has been concerns of one vocal member of the community about the noise coming out of Mandeville on weekends when the sport's playing, and people leaving the sports club bar at night time who are mainly sports club members. And they have been met with that resident to try and resolve those issues. And that was going well, and I think it's gone a little bit off track. And again, they've cut down trees along the old Eaton Pony boundary, which has opened up the entire subdivision to Mandeville. So again, part of our strategic plan is how do we work with the community around Mandeville, because as we continue to develop it, we're conscious that it's going to have an effect. Like the rugby club are looking to put in brand new lighting, which are more powerful than the lights they've got now. So when they go into the winter, they're going to brighten up Mandeville significantly. And so, but they need that to develop the game at Mandeville, but it is how that impacts the residents. So part of the board's strategy is to have consultation with the community and rate how they're going through yearly customer feedback, community feedback, and we've set targets on how satisfied club members, clubs in the community and stakeholders are with the performance of the board. So I think we're trying to cover it from quite a few areas. So yeah, but they are valid concerns. So.
Can I just carry on? Ray, Chris Brown and I met with that particular person, well, 2 of them actually, the one that's on the end and this other one, about the trees and their issues. The lady on the end, she's not quite so worried about things. There's just 1 or 2 trees that she would like to see removed because for safety. The other gentleman doesn't want the trees all gone at all. But the old makariri that are close by, they are actually, their roots and that are coming right over to their house, and their ground and everything else doesn't even. So we're going to be getting a tree tech in, tree tech, and they're going to mark the trees that need to go. And so that's where we're up to at the moment. I spent quite a bit of time with that gentleman, and we left with quite amiable, and just explained to him, because he didn't know that there's a walking track around there. He just thought people were just walking there, but there is actually a formed walking track. So it's a whole lot of things that he doesn't understand that we need to the board needs to deal with. So that's where that is. Yeah.
Can I just say a couple of things? Thank you. Yeah. I know the person you're talking about reasonably well. I play bowls with him. But that track that we're talking about, and under those trees, under lockdown, my grandchildren spent a lot of time going through there, and so it's quite important to them, and they're going to be around much longer than what I am. But under the district plan, the proposed district plan, Mandeville most of it is going to be a large lot residential zone, which means there's potential for it to virtually double in size, and so it's going to be quite huge. Mandeville doesn't have a school, doesn't have a church, doesn't have a community hall, and so the Mandeville Sports Centre is going to have to look very carefully. And I've got a foot in both camps, and I think there's going to be some very hard questions that'll be asked of the board in the near future. So good luck. Yeah, good. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm going to be speedy because I'm going to be at work in 5 hours. So, the community trusts have had their barbecue trailer. We did a big renovation on it. It's all been wrapped. It looks fantastic. And they're having their Christmas grotto from the 17th of December through to the 25th. And they, will be looking for volunteers to help out with that if anyone's available. I've been helping OPAC with their water tank project that they're embarking on. Somehow I've volunteered for that. Don't quite know how that happened, but and then I just wanted to mention the trees in Pearson Park that Shirley earlier mentioned about them falling over and the planting that they've done in there. So that's me.
I've got it all written out, but basically we've been very busy with webinars and Zooms and Three Waters, and it's actually and the district plan. So it's actually really been engulfing all of us. So but there's been lots of other stuff, but I'll just send what I've done through. I'm sorry, I've left it sitting on the bench. So I'll just send it, I know. It's all packed up, ready to go. I'll send it through to you because I've got it on. Oh my God, I think I deleted it. But I'm coming down tomorrow, so I'll give you one of those things to. Yeah, sorry.
Up the rear, must be my turn. Look, since we haven't had a meeting since August, I have a litany of things written down here, which I will send to you all, and you can read or not or whatever. But just highlights, I suppose. Back in August, you'll all note the Stadium Waimakariri opening. That was 5,000 people were there, which over the day, which was fantastic. I have met with and discussed things with various staff about concerns over the dog signage and also a Ohoka domain berm condition that has raised its ugly head again. So hopefully we can get to the end of that as well. There have, as Wendy rightly put, a whole bunch of Zooms. There's been a whole life on Zoom, and there have been lots of meetings and discussions over Three Waters and district plan. Also notable during lockdown, the COVID Welfare Committee reconvened and met regularly, weekly, to just make sure that everybody was okay out there. And it was actually really pleasantly surprising that the community did, in fact, fare very well. It was pretty much business as usual. There were a couple things, but by and large, this time around, people knew what to do. See, last time we had a situation where we had a whole new category of people that had never ever needed to access any kind of help in a system. They didn't know what was out there and if it was, if it was available for them and how to access it. And this time everybody kind of knew the script. So I think that we saw the benefit of that this time around. So there wasn't too much strife out there, really. We were expecting a lot more. On the GCP front, there have been a few meetings have gone under the bridge since then, but we have just undertaken an MOU with the government for an urban growth partnership, which basically that's similar to the Greater Christchurch Partnership, but it will also now involve 2 ministers of the Crown with a view to advancing the decarbonization of transport, increasing resilience to natural hazards and climate change, accelerating provision of quality, affordable housing, and improving access to education, employment, and services for the Greater Christchurch region. Now, why this matters to us is because we are the second largest metropolitan area in New Zealand, and we don't have one of these partnerships, but there are other places smaller than us, and mostly in the North Island, that do. And what this enables us to do is actually have a seat at the table to be heard a little bit more loudly and clearly than we have been in the past, instead of being brushed aside. So that's, believe it or not, quite an exciting development. The Waimakariri Youth Council, they've had a couple meetings since we've met last, but one of the exciting developments for that is we have a new youth coordinator who has been appointed, Emily Belton, and she comes from Bowls, New Zealand, actually, guys. Perk your ears up. And she's going to be fantastic. She's already gelling really well with the youth councillors. Canterbury Mayoral Forum Climate Change Workshop. The reason I mention this is because it's something that we meet regularly, but only maybe like every quarter or 6 months. But it's the climate change councillors across the 10 Canterbury councils, and we usually get a guest speaker, have a round table about sort of the wins, the challenges, and initiatives that everybody's doing, which is a really valuable networking opportunity. But the guest speaker was Trevor Stuthbridge, who's a research director from Ag Research. And it was really interesting to hear from him, particularly given that ours is a very rural ward with some water challenges, and the climate change, methane, nitrate question. And it's actually good to know that there's some research going on in there. It was quite fascinating, actually. But that's enough about all that. But the council meeting last September, just amongst topics discussed, were in light of investigations undertaken on the Oxford INI and monitoring upgrades and the wastewater treatment plant options to resolve sludge disposal, they decided that the unspent INI budget be transferred to the wastewater treatment options, because that was where the most improvements were to be had. Because when they actually looked, INI is inflow and infiltration, so it's basically like water getting into the pipes, like whether that be groundwater, rainwater, whatever. So they were like, okay, are there cracks in our pipes? Where's the extra water coming from? So whenever they actually looked into that, they found that it wasn't as bad as they thought it was, and the money was actually better spent in the wastewater treatment plant. And they have a good option to dewater the sludge, so it's not as heavy, doesn't have to be transported as far, and it will result in cost savings and also be environmentally better. So, but you can read about that in the report for information anyhow. But also there has been the approval of a 6-month trial for Flamingo e-scooters. So if you are out and about in Rangiora, Kaiapoi, Woodend, or Pegasus, they are going to drop up to 400 e-scooters in those places. The trial is going to run from either October, November, through till March and April, but not to worry, there will be geofencing restrictions for no-go, preferred parking, no parking, speed restrictions, and special access zones. It'll cost $1 to unlock and 38 cents per minute for general rates, and free to unlock and 30 cents per minute for students' gold card and community service card holders. I know you're all chomping at the bit to try one of those out, I'm sure. And hopefully, depending on how that goes, they will think about rolling it out to other places. Like, who knows? Oxford may or may not get some. We'll see how they go. Don't know how you feel about that, but that's, yeah. And then the Three Waters on 28th of September, I'm sure you're all aware, we unanimously voted not in favor of the reform. This isn't a situation where we can say we're opting out or not, but we have given feedback to say that the reform as it stands, as it's written, is not fit for purpose. And you'll also be aware that we notified the district plan on the 20th of September, so the consultation, of course, has begun. And other news, for those who haven't heard it, I'm finally allowed to tell you that myself and Neville Atkinson have been appointed as the elected representatives on the panel, on the hearings panel for the district plan. Therefore, it might make a little bit more sense to you now that I'm not putting my hand up to man stalls for district plan and whatnot, because I do need to be very careful about any kind of perceived conflicts or biases or anything like that, when in actual fact I have a very open mind on all of it. So, but that's quite excited to finally get that notified and over the line and just get on with it, because it's been a long time coming. The council meeting that we had yesterday, I regret to inform you all, we were talking about whether, or rather the motion was to go out for consultation for the district walking and cycling plan. However, whilst we have voted to go ahead and go out for consultation, Waka Kotahi have disappointingly left us entirely high and dry. They have allocated us 0 funding, to which I did voice my great displeasure, may I say so. So basically what that means is, whilst we're going to go out and ask the community what their thoughts are on the network and whatnot, we can't actually give you any major timeframes or anything like that. We have the $563,500 budget that we have allocated, which is our 49%. And the NZTA have given us zilch towards their 51%, which we had every reason to expect for them to give us, which they did not. Have no idea why. So yeah, we've just got $563,000 for the next 3 years to proceed with. So what the thought was with the consultation going ahead was more for us to just feel out with the community the prioritization of the projects, and also it's important for us to actually be able to demonstrate for further funding rounds that we actually have a coherent plan and that ready to go. From my point of view, I find it incredibly disappointing that, we've been told that the NZTA, that Waka Kotahi are starting to focus on alternative active modes of transport. They want us to do that. We've done that, and we still didn't get anywhere, so it's really frustrating. So I'm sure that you'll all join me with your frustration as well. And interestingly, moving on from that subject, yeah, well, they hit this. I think what probably delayed it was the fact that they were waiting to get the funding. And whenever we got the funding package presented to us, we went, wait, what? I'm sorry. Yeah. So I don't, yeah. Was it November or something? Yeah. So we thought, even though we're kind of not consulting on what we originally had hoped for, we still feel that we need to know from our community prioritization-wise. Yeah. Yeah. And interestingly, they're going to do a container trial for the Whistler Bridge protection. So that's in Lees Valley in our ward. And so that bridge has repeatedly washed out, and the gabion protection that they've used hasn't, it just keeps getting washed away. And obviously we're going to see more and more of this. So they're trying something a little bit new and going to try a new, they're going to trial a new method of stabilizing the bridge to keep it from washing out by filling containers, like railway containers, with gravel and burying them about a meter in, and then putting gravel up against them. It'll look a little bit different. Hopefully it works, but that's something of interest. The draft parking strategy proposal has been okayed to go out to consultation, and as was rightly mentioned by Shirley, the speed limit consultation is open right now until the 18th of October. It's been 2 months. Sorry for the long report. Yeah. It's just been passed to go out for, but I don't have the dates for that yet. It's not live yet, but the speed limit one is. So, questions?
Right, thank you.
Send this through to you.
Moving on to
a couple of points on that. I'm just bringing up the other thing I'd like to emphasise is that you can do hard copy submissions. So on that link, there's a downloadable form, and certainly plenty of people are doing that. At the drop-in sessions we've had so far, which is Talk to a Planner, they've been really well attended. They've been really busy. We've actually had to amp up the number of planners at those evening sessions. So sometimes, just let people know, sometimes they will have a bit of a wait. We've got Audrey there, moving people on, and what we're saying to planners, if it's going to be a longer conversation, we might need to rebook them to come in so they can have so we're trying to keep the time to sort of 10 to 15 minutes, but they have been working well. Yeah, yep, they have been really busy, and always at the start we get overwhelmed at the start because everyone comes about 10 minutes early, and then it wanes out a little bit later. So we have adjusted times, but there is still time if we feel like there's other places you'd like us to be. Audrey is coordinating that. So, but definitely people can do hard copy submission like they do with anything else if they need to. And sorry, I did just get a slightly different topic. I got a email from Joanne McBride. She obviously went away and had a look at the Mandeville car park consent to see exactly where it was at. The current consent is for a sealed and marked car park. Yeah, so she's updated me on that. It may be amended from there, but that's where it stands as at today. So I don't know if there's any questions about the district plan. You're all right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I would just like to remind members to please encourage members of the community to apply for the grant funding. We on the 4th month of the financial year, and we've only received one application for the Oxford-Ohoka area. So it would be highly appreciated if you could just get the word out there. I would also like to advise that the Community Board's Youth Development Grant Fund is now receiving applications, and all the information is available on the council website. Thank you.
Right, Tia has just said, if you indicate now, tonight, if you want to go out for a meal, and Tia will ring a few places and try and get something organised. So, and let the board members know.
Yep.
What's that for? Everybody's doing that, surely.
Okay, we are finished.
I know what you meant.